Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, it's Adam here, and welcome to PlayLoad. This actually is not all my video game pickups for the month of November 2022, but please don't leave. We have a lot of hiccups. There's so much so that there's going to be multiple videos. We'll get into that in a second. But if you guys could do me a favor, before we get to all that kind of good stuff, do me a favor. Like this video, comment down below, subscribe if you haven't done that before, and also hit me up in the social media stuff in the description: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, etc. Appreciate you, going over and supporting those various platforms. And check out my new channel, which is about flying and eating and adventuring around the world, and how I end up with a lot of this stuff in the first place. And why is that significant? Because I went to Japan. I was in Japan for 2 weeks, and a lot of stuff came back from that. Only a small fragment of it will appear in this video, for the simple reason that there was so much content, as insane as that is, that it actually requires 3 videos, including this one. Because if I were to put it all in one video, this would at least a 3-hour video, if not longer. It would have just been insane. So stay tuned for those. But if you want to see the adventure in Japan, again, go to the travel channel, and you can see like the whole story of picking stuff up, but also just travel tips for Japan, restaurant recommendations, if you've never been there before, what to expect, that kind of thing. But I do that for all these places I go to. Anyway, I think you guys are going to get a kick out of it. Now, getting into the video game pickups. So this is first one up is actually a fragment of the previous adventure. I had actually taken a trip out to Portugal. And while I was out there, I picked up a few games. I remember going into this one store over in the Porto area. There's a store called like Plus Two Hogos or something. I mean, obviously my Portuguese is terrible, but I remember going in there and seeing a game where I was like, I don't remember that coming out. Something about it. It caught my attention, but I was like, whatever. And I just passed on it. I get back to my girlfriend's house and I look up that game, only to find out that it is in fact a European exclusive. Actually, the source I found that up, shout out to one of my Patreon backers, a guy named Luis Bonilla. He had actually posted on Instagram pictures of this game, and I was like, oh, because he told the whole story. He's like, oh, it's an exclusive title, whatever. So shout out to you, dude, if you're watching this. But yeah, so I was like, whoa, all right, I should go back over to the store and pick it up. But I was like, I didn't remember how much it costs. And then I look online on Amazon UK, and it was relatively cheap. So I sat there and I thought, like, which makes more sense? Go find this game or, just order it on Amazon? Very long story short, it was cheaper to buy it on Amazon UK while I was sitting in Portugal and have it shipped here to Chicago than it would have been to go down the street and buy it locally. Economics. Anyway, so the game that we're talking about here is the Klonoa Fantasy Reversi series, or Reversi, forgive my pronunciation on that. This is basically a remaster or a re-release of Klonoa 1 and Klonoa 2 for the Xbox One / Xbox Series X. Now, this got a digital release here on this platform, but physically it only got an edition in Europe for whatever reason. I don't know about the Switch and PS4 / PS5 versions, but at least with the Xbox ecosystem, if you wanted the physical edition, this was it. It comes with a code pack for some sort of points at Bandai Namco, but you get the physical disc, and the games are entirely contained on it. I think there was a small patch, but nothing significant. It's only like an 8 GB install, so it's really the entirety of the games. But if you're a big Klonoa guy or girl, this is, I think, a worthwhile pickup. But yeah, there you go. So I picked that up. That's just like a remnant. That showed up in the mail since. Everything after that is relatively just like, whoa, okay. The most obvious place to start would be Black Friday. Just happened at the time I'm recording this. I didn't really go all that nuts with Black Friday. I had spent a bunch of money in Japan, to be completely real with you guys, and I was just like, let's take it a little bit more modest this year. There wasn't a whole lot of things grabbing my attention, and then Black Friday, man, it just sucks you in. It finds a way to make you do stupid things. So I got a couple of games, nothing super significant. And I think there's going to be some spillover to next month, but we'll get there when we get there. The first thing I picked up was debatably pointless, but I got it anyway. This was Far Cry 6 for the Xbox One / Xbox Series X. Ubisoft had sent me a digital, Supreme Ultimate Edition of this, so there really was no reason to jump on this other than just wanting to own it physically. But Black Friday at Best Buy, this was only $10, so I was like, okay, that's the right price. I actually enjoyed this game. I know a lot of people really didn't, but I liked Far Cry 6. I liked previous entries more, but I did quite enjoy this. So Yeah, it's it was a fun game. I like the premise of it. Of course, you like the villain. You like the idea that it takes place in like a fake type of Cuba, etc. But yeah, I think this was it was a pretty good game. So it wasn't my favorite entry. I admit that right up front, but I still liked it. So yeah, there you go. We got that. This one's a little funny because a bunch of people were really upset with me about this. So as I said, I was in Japan. So all the videos that had to come out while I was in Japan, logically so, had to be made before I went to Japan. And so I, shot them as relatively close to the release date as I could while still having time to actually finish them. And one of them was, I did the videos on the PS5 anniversary because it had just been 2 years. And of course, the Xbox Series X anniversary had also been 2 years. And so I was like, okay, I did them as best I could. But there was one little line, I forget which one it was in. I think I was talking specifically about franchises that have gone from, just like gamers like it to like everyone's aware of it, popular IPs. Like, I think I was talking about Call of Duty specifically, like, the general public knows what that is. Madden, they know what that is. Mario, they know what that is. And Sonic, they know what that is. And I kind of made a little dig at Sonic because if I'm totally honest, Sonic, as we all know, has not had that many good games since the Dreamcast era. There was like Sonic Mania was the obvious one. People had like some soft spots for a few games here and there. Sonic Generations is probably the one remembered best. I personally enjoyed Sonic Lost World, even though I felt it was like a few patches away from being a really good game. It was fine on that scale. So to be completely brutally honest, when Sonic Frontiers was coming up, I was like, this is probably not going to be anything special. It's probably safe to make a little dig at it. And then it came out. And people loved it. Like, the game came out while I was in Japan, and people were like, oh my god, this is like the best Sonic game since Sonic Adventure 2. So a lot of people were mad at me in the video because they thought I was insulting Sonic Frontiers. And in a sense, I kind of was. But you gotta give me a break, man. Like, I was not expecting that game to end up being good. So I went out and I got Sonic Frontiers. My apologies. But Best Buy had a nice little deal on this, too. It was $20 off, brand new. For a relatively new release. That's really, really cool. So yeah, I'm looking forward to playing this because I've talked to a few people. We talked about it extensively on my podcast from Joseph, who had actually played it, who says that, yeah, this is probably the best Sonic game since Sonic Adventure 2. So yeah, I'm excited about that. And the last one I picked up here was for the PS5. We got Horizon Forbidden West. No real story to this one. It was on sale, and I was like, oh, yeah, why not get some more PS5 content? It's good to have another Horizon game, especially an exclusive game. I like that the launch edition includes full game. Thanks. We've reached a weird era. But anyway, yeah, that's cool all the same. So the next few things here are from Japan and are at best a teaser for things that are to come. The first thing here, you'll notice it says Wii or Wii U on it. I don't know what English. It says Wii U, but you may not be able to see that. So while I was in Japan, extremely long story short here, I met up with this guy named Joseph, who's in the U.S. military. Now, the U.S. military has bases all over Japan. Because I am an American and he has actually active service, he could actually get me onto the base. So, again, this will be in videos you can see on the Travel Channel. But we went into a store on the U.S. military base just kind of for the novelty of it. And they have a video game section there, which is all the American stuff. Now, they actually have a lot of stuff that's just kind of been sitting there for a really long time because only active military personnel can actually buy things from the store. So I couldn't actually buy anything, even if I wanted to. And on top of that, like, the amount of demand decreases as something gets older and older. So I don't really know what they do with their old inventory other than just keep it in the clearance bin for a long time. But whatever. So we saw a few things. Like we saw stacks of Splatoon for the Wii U, and each one was like $7.50 or whatever, like sealed, brand new, unused, stuff like that. But this caught my attention. They had these really cool. These are comfort grip packs for the Wii U gamepad. Now, we just actually hit the 10th anniversary of the Wii U, believe it or not. I think I'll do a video of sorts on that. It'll be obviously late because the anniversary's already happened, but I think I'm going to do something with that. This has kind of quasi-inspired me. But so I saw this thing, and it's just a place to put the gamepad that's like more firm and secure. Now, I've already had stuff like this, but the ones I've got are kind of loose and not great. This just kind of was like, huh, that's interesting. And so the price was originally $29.95. They then slashed it to half off, so then it was $14.97. Then they took off. It looks like they took off another $5, so it was down to 10. Then it was down to 50% off of that, so it should have been 5. And then so Joseph ended up buying these because he's like, this one had a 75% off tag. I bought 2 of them. So long story short, they also have no sales tax. So once we got up there, he was like, these are $1.50 each. I have 2 Wii U's. This is perfect, you know? The other funny thing is that I observed in Japan was that right now, the thing that's really in a lot of junk bins is Wii U's, including gamepads. So I didn't buy a Wii U, spoilers, I didn't need one. But, yeah, future-proofing. Got 2 Wii U's, got 2 of these. Maybe in the future we'll need some other gamepads, who really knows, but... yeah, for $1.50 each, why not? So that was cool. Now, on to stuff we actually got in Japan. I'm sure I've talked about this many times in the past. In fact, I know I have, but hopefully you've seen the videos. There is a store chain in Japan called Book Off. There's a whole bunch of this. There's a thing called the Off series where it's like basically a whole line of different stores that are kind of somewhat connected to each other. The ones I talk about the most are Book Off and Hard Off. Everybody loves laughing at that name, but I think the much funnier one is there's an alcohol store called Liquor Off. That's funnier. I'm just saying. There's Garage Off for car parts. There's Mode Off. There's Hobby Off. There's House Off. They're all part of this thing. Book Off tends to sell video games, as does Hard Off. Book Off is a little more curated. Hard Off is just kind of like, who knows what's in here. So I typically prefer going to Hard Off now. Book Off is usually cleaner, like I said, a little more curated, but also prices can reflect that. So I don't really find stuff there as much as I used to. But that said, I still got some things. And no sales tax, which is great. If you're a tourist, you sometimes don't have to pay that. I talk about that more on the travel channel. It doesn't matter for our purposes. Here's what I picked up. I picked up a GameCube controller, the orange one specifically. It's funny. The orange GameCube was a completely common standard release in Japan. It is not expensive by any means, but over here we think of it as this like odd special version. Hell, myself, I actually did a video on it under the Rare Variants series when it's not at all rare. But yeah, but I only had the console. I actually didn't have the controller for it, so I found one in a Book Off. It was only a few bucks, so I was like, all right, that'll go nice, match it up there. Controller's in good shape. No real issues with that. I remember the thumbstick was a little sticky, but I cleaned that and it was all good to go. So, orange GameCube controller, along with several games. The first one up is Puyo Puyo Box for the PS1. PS1 is not a region-free console, unfortunately. However, it's easy enough to bypass that kind of thing now. The reason I actually wanted this, funny enough, was because this was the last Puyo Puyo game developed before Sega owned the franchise outright. This was like they partially owned it, but at this time they didn't own it completely, and this was the last one under the Compile era, which was the previous development team. So it was cheap, and it was like, oh, that's cool. It's like tangentially connected to like Sega lore and all that, so why not? I went ahead and picked it up. And then we got a few 360 games. Now, the funny thing about the 360 is I've been kind of avoiding picking up any Japanese 360 stuff for the longest time because the 360 is usually region locked. Not always, but there's no obvious markings on it. It's not like the PS3. If we go back to that 7th gen era, 100% of all games are region locked. PS3, every game is region unlocked, except for I think there's a version of Persona 4 for some reason that's region locked, but like every other game on the system is region free. The 360 is whatever the developer felt like doing. Sometimes it was, sometimes it wasn't. And it was like a mixed bag. So it became kind of difficult to work around that. And contrary to popular belief, the 360 was not the dud in Japan that people like in the West think it is. I mean, I thought that for the longest time because that's what we were always kind of told. It's not true. The 360 actually, for the first few years, I would say really from like 2005 to like 2009, was actually pretty significant in Japan. For the sole reason that Microsoft initially said, just make what you're going to make. And so developers got behind it. They started making a bunch of weird, as Japan does, they made a lot of weird Japanese-centric games for the Japanese market. And then Microsoft themselves screwed that up when they got those games. They started seeing what, Xbox had become in Japan in like 2009. They were like, we can't have all these like weird anime games and these weird things on our platform. This is terrible for our brand. Stop allowing that. force them to have Call of Duty. That's what they want. And then... and it hasn't really recovered all that well since. I mean, to be fair, the Series X is doing better than it probably should be. But either way... the 360, as a result of that, actually had a lot of the Japanese exclusive titles in that like 4-year span. I don't care about getting them all, but I do care about getting some of the better ones, or at least the ones you might consider to be games, because there's also a lot of like just anime date sim type of stuff I couldn't care less about. But yeah, I got a few here. We got Arcana Hearts 3, which is just like a fighting game. It was a very cheap one. I don't think it's a particularly good fighting game, but it was only a couple bucks, and I was like, all right, you're not going to get too many 360 Japanese exclusives for less than that, so why not? This might have had a digital release here, I don't know. When I say exclusive, I am referring to it physically. Some of them are truly exclusives, but some of them are just like, oh, it only got a physical edition there. I think actually, I'm not sure about all of these, but this one definitely was, well, I know all of these were only physically released there on the 360, but again, digitally, this one in particular might have come out here. This is Death Smiles 2. It's a cave shooter. Cave is a developer. And this game is pretty cool. It's a shoot 'em up game, which was the most common thing that I was kind of like trying to keep an eye out for, because the 360 had a ton of those in Japan. Usually by Cave, but there were other developers behind it. This one I'm pretty sure did get a digital release in North America and Europe, but physically it only came out in Japan. So yeah, it's cool. You know, it's a nice little set. Again, it wasn't particularly expensive, which is great. This one though, of the book off pickups, was the best one, because this was not a super uncommon game, but it's not a common one either, and it's a shoot 'em up. And yeah, this is Dudanpachi Dai Fukatsu. I might probably got that wrong, but again, cave shooter game. Death Smiles 2 and Arcana I had seen a bunch of times. This one I only saw once, like the entire trip, and I looked at a lot of stores, trust me. So yeah, this I believe was originally part of the Cave Shooter collection, which is a big box set that's super expensive. Spoilers, I did not find that. But yeah, this is cool. Glad to have that. So, because shoot 'em up games, language barrier, not a problem. You can play that regardless. So, very cool. That was all my book off pickups. Like I said, most of my shopping was done at Hard Off. So much so that Hard Off pickups specifically will get its own video. Stay tuned. This is not video game related, but I just want to throw this out there for a second, just because I found this kind of interesting, and I'm sure others would as well. As I just mentioned with Hard Off, it's a, you know, used mixed purpose electronics and junk store basically. So I went into one and I was like picking up my games and everything, and there is a thing in Japan, as I mentioned, tax-free sales. When you reach a certain financial threshold, usually 5,000 yen. 5,000 yen is about, it used to be about 50 bucks. Now it's more like $30 because the yen has completely crashed. And so at this one Hard Off in particular, I was really struggling to find, I mean, that happened a lot, actually, to be honest. I was really struggling to be able to get over that threshold, because it's like, oh, I'll get some, you know, power supplies or something like that. Those are like $1 each. Like, it's really hard to make that point. So you don't always necessarily do it. This thing saved me, though, because it put me over the edge. As I'm walking around, I just noticed this, and I was like, huh. Does anybody remember this show, House MD? You know, like all of a sudden I'm spacing on the actor's name, but you know, a medical show. You know, this was a big show like quite a few years ago. Now the funny thing is, this show never got a Blu-ray release in the United States. It got like the last 3 seasons got Blu-ray sets, but not like the whole series or anything. And so I was sitting there looking at it, I'm like, huh, I had no idea the show got a Blu-ray release in Japan. And it did, but this isn't it. Because the other thing I noticed on it was the little like red 18 logo. That's what the British use. And so I'm like sitting there like, wait a minute. Is this the British set sitting in a Japanese junk bin? It just threw me off. And I looked it up, and sure enough, that's exactly what the case was. This is the British release that was sitting in a Japanese junk bin. And I was a little surprised by that, to say the least. And online, this is like $100 box set. They had it marked down to 3,000 yen. 3,000 yen is like maybe $20 currently. And so I was like, whoa, that's a good deal. Because that's a good show. I've wanted that box set, and I was doing them a favor too, because you could just get it out of there. Now, partially I was perplexed as to how it got there, why it was there, etc. I still don't have no clue on that. To be fair, though, this version of it actually does have both Japanese audio and Japanese subtitles. So it's not inconceivable that somebody living in Japan liked the show and imported this it's possible, and then they watched it in Japanese. It's very, very possible. Because if it didn't have that, it would be even more of a mystery. Because at least with American stuff, like, we're there, our bases are there, and the British, like, I don't, whatever, like some tourist came there to sell that. I find that unlikely, so I don't know. But either way, I got it, and I was happy about that. And I got one other Blu-ray release. This one was planned for because I was like, oh, this got a Blu-ray release in Japan, and really barely got one anywhere else. Does anybody of my age range, I'm 35, does anyone remember the late 90s movie Teaching Mrs. Tingle? There's probably like 4 of you. It got a Blu-ray release in Japan like a year ago. Now, this is a very, very 90s movie. but the thing is, all right, so here's the sick, sad truth of this movie. I like this movie. It was one of the ones I watched as a kid where you're like in the grungy type of 90s environment, where like, oh, whatever the teenagers are doing when you're in middle school, like, they're awesome. And of course, back then, the idea of teenagers, like, are like, they're all like super attractive people that are very, very tall because they're all really like their 30s as actors. And of course, they're all like, in this case, it's like, oh, they're super strong, like people who have to like fight their teacher and stuff like that. Movies like The Faculty or all the Scream movies, like just this unrealistic portrayal of what high school is. Etc. This movie is kind of the late run of that, and I was like, oh man, I've always wanted a Blu-ray release of that, but like that will like never happen because it technically got a Blu-ray release very briefly in the United States, exclusively to Best Buy, but I didn't pick it up because it came and went really fast. Part of the reason for that was this movie is owned lock, stock, and barrel by one Harvey Weinstein. And nobody wants to work with the guy. So that his movies, if like any movie where you're like, wow, why did that get a release and it's like vanished all of a sudden, look into it. Because if he owned it, there's a like Dogma, the Kevin Smith movie, like probably never get another physical edition again because he owns that movie lock, stock, and barrel until he's dead and the rights have passed to somebody else, or he just sells everything. Who knows? Though a lot of his movies are just going to sit there in limbo forever. This happens to be one of them. However, in Japan, Miramax, I guess, doesn't own the distribution rights to this movie. Paramount does. And so in Japan, Paramount just released it on Blu-ray. I think it's the exact same transfer that was done like 10 years ago when Best Buy had it, but either way, it was like $6. Finding it, though, was almost impossible. We actually had to do this through Amazon Japan, and then a buddy of mine named Aldo, who's a member of my Discord. You should totally join my Discord because everybody in there is awesome, and we all hang out. We meet each other up. It's fun. He did me a solid. I went ahead and ordered it. We sent it to him. Then he and I went and had dinner, and he just handed it to me. So, very cool. But is the movie great? No, it's the late 90s. But to me, finding it at all was just awesome. So, keep an eye out for stuff like that. Some countries will surprise you with like a random release here and there. Anyway, back onto video game stuff. We have package time here. The first thing up actually comes from Wave Studios, which is a British indie developer. They do a lot of Dreamcast stuff. I've been doing videos on their stuff for a long time. I'm really, happy to constantly be working with them. And I have a little announcement we'll make here in a second, but after we open this up. This is... Well, this was a surprise. I actually didn't know what this was going to be. They sent me a magazine. This is Sega Power, issue 6, the Virtua issue. So this is all about Master System, Game Gear, Mega Drive, Mega CD, 32X Saturn, Dreamcast, of course, Sega. So they have a whole bunch of stuff, but they're staff writers. They got... Well, obviously, this issue seems to really focus on Virtua Fighter, but it's got a whole lot of information about stuff. But yeah, just this one of these like special, like awesome magazines. Hopefully, I get to write for them or something at some point. I've written for a few random publications. You'd be surprised. Yeah, that's cool. It's got a lot of info about various games. There's like modern reviews. Yeah, these are called re-reviews of Mega Drive games. It looks like. I'm sure there's other ones like, oh yeah, here's some Saturn ones they've re-reviewed. That's kind of a nice idea. Like, we go back and look at some random game from a different era and then, like, play it now and see, like, how did it hold up? Does it still hold up? They also review indie games. That's cool. So they review Alice Dreams Tournament, which was a Dreamcast game. Not one that they did, but that's cool. It's just, I like that. Nice little honest opinions of everything. So, yeah. And, oh, that's funny. So they have a bit about... The Sega arcades, the one in Japan, which, funny enough, does not even exist anymore. I was actually just at this location. It is now by a company called Go-Go because Sega pulled out of there, unfortunately. But, yeah, very cool. So, thank you guys over there for the Sega Power issue. This is a good time to announce this, though. So, Wave is, in participation with other groups, is doing a convention in April. of 2023 called OLL. I'm not really allowed to talk about much beyond that. They'll have all sorts of details up on their website and everything. But what I can say is I'm going to be a guest there. So to all the British watching, if you've ever wanted to come meet me at a thing, I'll be there. I think the Sega Pluto is going. They didn't request it. I don't know. I'll probably just bring it because it's me, and I'm sure we'll find a place for it. But if you want to see that too, I'm sure that will be there. But I 100% will be. So we'll make that a thing. So what we'll do is we'll all hang out. We'll get Indian food. It'll be awesome. British Indian food's like the best thing ever. Yeah, it'll be a good time. So hopefully you guys can come up to OLL. I believe it's in Norwich. I forgive my pronunciation, like an hour or two north of London proper. So that should be fun. So keep an eye out for that. And thank you again to Wave for this. Moving on, we got a few other packages here. This one, I'm not 100% on what this is, but let's go ahead and find out. Oh, right. Okay, so this is the Cloner Alliance Box Pro. Right, so these guys are pretty cool. They messaged me like a little while ago, and they said like, hey, do you want to like take a look at our latest like, capture device? So this requires a little bit of an explanation. I think it was a couple of years ago, these guys actually sent me a different capture device called the Flint 4KP Plus, which basic idea, I'm sure a lot of you refer to that concept as a capture card, which is not actually what it is. But the concept is you take this thing and you record either your gameplay or whatever you want connected to any sort of modern device, and then you use the footage for whatever your purposes are. So like when I have to, for example, do Dreamcast videos, as I was just talking about, I have to run it through something like this. I've been running it through the Clint 4KP Plus for the last couple of years. This is, I guess, their newest model, which actually addresses the biggest Achilles heel of the older one. It was dependent upon your PC. What I liked about it was the fact that you could use it as an interim between your device and your television, and it could still like go through and you see the signal consistently, and the box would do a lot of the work, but it would ultimately send the feed over to your PC, and then your PC would have to do some element of the capture. Personally, that had, it worked, but it basically meant I can't do anything else with the PC while it's recording because it could theoretically disrupt the footage in some capacity. What's cool about this one is that this one can do both. You can actually capture that same old method, which essentially it gives you the 4KP plus additional features. So let's go ahead and take a look at it, because this one can actually operate independent of your PC, which is where I'm more excited about it, because I typically like to reduce the workload on my PC if at all possible. And thanks to these guys, I can do that now. So just for the record, by the way, this was not sponsored. They didn't pay for this. They're just sending me a thing because they sent me the previous one, and I think they just wanted to help, make it easier for me to record stuff like this, because like I said, that is one of the big issues, is recording on the PC means there's a little bit of issues there. But this is going to make life a little bit easier. So the box itself is a little bit bigger than the previous one. So this has HDMI in, HDMI out. It has the USB connection to your PC, and it has this thing called MMI in, which we'll get back to in a second. It has a separate power supply. And then it has buttons on the front that say source, snapshot, and record. So source would allow you to switch between the inputs, which again we'll get back to. Snapshot, you could literally just like capture a photo of or whatever is on the screen, like a thumbnail, I guess you could think of it that way, although I don't know how much use I would really get out of that. And then there's a record button to record and stop. Over here where it says Cloner on the top there, that actually like lights up while the thing's recording, which is pretty nice, so you know for sure when it's running. But the idea is that this thing does all the work. That's really why I'm excited about it, because this thing is completely detached from the PC if you want it to be. That way I don't have to be dependent upon it, and if it's doing 100% of the work, it's usually the recordings are typically better, which I'm a big fan of. Yeah. So, by the way, the reason this is not called a capture card, we got to stop calling it that. That's not the right word. Are you familiar with your video card, the thing you install on your PC? There are capture versions of that go in your PC within it. That's a capture card. This is a capture device, an external capture device, whereas the previous model was just a capture device. Language is important. Anyway, so we have a few different cables and things. We have the power supply there, nothing really all that special about that, but necessary, of course. We have the remote control, which has various features, because this thing has an internal scaler, which is actually, I don't know how much I would personally use it, but I could see why others will, but we'll get back to that. It has options for adjusting the aspect ratio from 4:3, 16:9. You can also adjust various color settings. So this thing allows you to kind of preemptively change some of the colors and things like that, the brightness, in advance. So if for some reason you're capturing footage from, let's just say hypothetically, you're playing a game that's very, very dark and the game's specific, internals do not allow you to adjust it to a brightness or a color palette that you're happy with, this has additional options that will let you do that so that your footage comes out better than what you're seeing. That way, post-production you doesn't have to deal with all of this. As someone who has to deal with stuff like that all the time, that's really, really nice. It also has, I don't know how much I would use it, but it's worth mentioning. This thing also has the option to feed a separate mic into it, so you can actually capture that directly into your recording. So for example, if you're like, hey, I'm going to do commentary on video, you could record the video and your audio through all of this at once. The editor in me doesn't like that idea, but it's there. That one actually is more useful for when you connect it to the PC, because you can also use this as essentially a broadcast device. Like if you're going to do live streams, then that makes more sense. But using it to like actually mix straight into your video is an option. You don't have to use it. But as I just said, you can use this as a separate capture device via your PC. So if you're doing like live Twitch streams or whatever, this is pretty good for that. It comes with a micro USB cable as well as an HDMI cable. And the other one, this is what we're going to kind of talk about here for a second, is this thing that they refer to as the MMI-in. Probably like multimedia something or other. This actually will give you access to component, composite, and VGA, which that one was a little surprising. Basically, this is good for legacy hardware. That's where I'm going with this. So if you're like, hey man, I'm the guy out there who's got my old VCR, or maybe even like you're the guy who's playing a Sega Genesis and you're like, oh, I'm only playing it through composite, that's how I want to do things, but I'd kind of like to capture that footage for X, Y, and Z reasons. This is going to be of a lot of help to you, because this basically, they gave you the cable and said, all right, just go ahead and plug it right in, and then their device will take care of the upscaling. This thing has a built-in upscaler that takes whatever your source content is, and then will either give you, depending on what you choose, 720p or 1080p resolutions. Now, I will be totally honest, as neat as that feature is, I doubt I would personally get much use out of it, because I've made everything go to HDMI first. I let other devices do the processing before sending it to this, but I think it's important for the retro gaming audience to at least be aware that you have that option if you want to. So that's a thing. Also, as far as storage goes, I should have mentioned this on the side. Yeah, so I said there's line in, there's line out for separate audio sources, and then there's storage. That's a USB port that will allow, like if you're saving to this device specifically, rather than being dependent upon an SD card, which is how most of them do it, this one gives you the choice. You could put in a hard drive, you could put in a flash drive, whatever you want. Format it to either, I think it's FAT32 or NTFS, although I probably would recommend NTFS, but I know FAT32 works. I don't typically like FAT32 because it limits individual file sizes to 4 gigabytes, though there are certain advantages to that because your editing software is much less likely to choke on it, but that's another matter. But anyway, so that's all there. Then, once you have it, there's special software you need. You register it on their website. It gives you all the capture stuff. I already have all that software because I've got their previous models. So this is just going to be nice for me. It's going to make the video production easier because I really hate trying to capture footage directly to the PC. It causes issues that this is going to bypass. So that's just the editor in me is very happy about that. So huge shout out to Cloner Alliance for hooking me up with that. They didn't have to do that. They're just trying to make my job a little bit easier. So thank you to them. If you want this or whatever, I'll put a link in the description. You can pick it up there. So yeah, huge shout out to them for the Cloner Alliance Box Pro. Thank you very much. Yeah. No, I like these. I like to actually show. I hope you guys appreciate seeing this from time to time. The how the sausage is made items, because those are the things that makes me making videos a lot easier. That means I can be more efficient about it. So, yeah. Next up, this is a package from a guy in my Discord. As I just said, I have an awesome Discord. People in there are very, very nice. This comes from a very lovely Irish gentleman who goes by the name Miriel Lucky O'Charms. And he sent me this, and I don't entirely remember why. Sorry about that. Okay, I actually ripped the thing. So he includes a note and says, "Hi Adam, apologies for the lack of actual Sorel. Sorrel is a Turkish-made chocolate hazelnut spread. He doesn't live in Turkey. I don't know why he doesn't understand that. I wouldn't expect that to come from the Republic of Ireland. It says, please find enclosed the SD card confirmed to work with the 7800 Concerto firmware. Cheers, Mr. O'Charms, or Oliver, which I think is what he goes by in human reality, but we prefer to think of him as Mr. O'Charms. But yes, he sent me an SD card. This is a 32 gigabyte SanDisk card. So I showed this on a previous video. There is a flash card for the Atari 7800 called the Concerto. He literally bought it for me. But he was super into this, so he really wanted it to work. And so he was trying to find like the right match of things for the greatest compatibility. And he said this SD card in particular works extremely well with it, to the point where he bought a couple extras, and then he decided to send me one because he has some way of sending, even though he's international, he can send this domestically. Appreciate it. So he just sent that along. So thank you very much to Mr. O'Charms. So when we eventually get around to the Concerto video, he has really made that video possible. So thank you, dude. Next up, we got another package here. This one, I think I remember what this is. I think this is a webcam, if memory. Yes, okay. This is very similar to the Cloner Alliance box. This was a company that reached out to me called eMeet, and they basically said like, "Hey, we are making a new webcam. Do you want it?" And I was like, "Sure." So they just sent it. So yeah, this is where this will be useful, and I'm making a big announcement right now. My birthday is right around the corner, December 8th. That's a Thursday this year. I intend to do a live Q&A. Like, I stopped doing those when YouTube decided to punish every YouTuber on the planet for doing exactly what they requested of us. Thanks, YouTube. But yes, this year I will be doing one where we sit down, I answer your questions. We just chat and hang out, hopefully for 12 hours or so, because they go for a very long time. So they're going to help me with this. They provided a brand new camera. So this thing's pretty cool. It's a webcam, like a lot of webcams. Of course, it has built-in audio and stuff like that. I don't think I'm going to use that. These are really designed for, I mean, hence the name eMeet. This is really designed for like Zoom calls and stuff like that, and Skype calls, and you know, it wouldn't be me if I wasn't using it the way it was intended. Just like the Cloner box is designed for people who want to capture modern HDMI things, and I'm like, what kind of Sega Genesis can we put in there? Like, no, same type of idea. They basically designed this for people who have, like, I guess you would say, real jobs. You know, people who have to do conference calls and all that sort of stuff. What am I going to do it for? I'm going to do it for a live stream. But yeah, this thing has... where this is kind of significant is it actually has two different resolution modes. It has 4K 30 and 1080p 60. Realistically, we're going to run it at 1080p 60, just because you don't really need 4K of a fat guy sweating, but technically the option exists. So let's take a look at the camera real quick here. Inside, you can see there's the unit itself. It's very small. It uses looks like USB-C port on the back. It also has this little ring on it, so if you have a webcam like this and you're like paranoid about somebody like, you know, getting at your computer and like looking at what you're doing, this actually has a little plastic dial. You can just be like, oh, nope, sorry, hacksaws, I win. It's an option. Like, I understand if you want to do that. I actually put tape over my laptop webcam just out of paranoia. But anyway, so it also has a mount ring right there, so you can actually connect this to a tripod. You don't have to, but you can do that, or you can rig it up to any other number of things, but the option exists for you. And alternatively, if you just kind of want to like set it on something, that works that way. So they gave you both options, which is nice. Within the box itself, it has, well, beyond that, it really just has, you know, a few cables and things like that. We have, let's see here, looks like we have a little baggie. Oh yeah, this is like a nice little travel carrying case. So I guess if you were to, again, if you're like a real adult with a real job, again, you know, goes on the road and has to do business meetings abroad, if you work, you know, from remotely, as the term is, this would be good for travel purposes, because then you can just take that with you and then, you know, whatever. But the cable it comes with is a single USB-C to USB-A cable, which is actually nice. I'm kind of getting tired of only having either A to A or C to C. I don't have that many A to C cables, so just having that in general is nice. Thank you very much for that. But yeah, this, you know, from what I've seen online, it looks like a very nice little webcam. So that was really cool of them to just kind of send it to me, just so the stream can be better. So I want that on record. Like, these guys, thank you very much to eMeet, because they're going to make that video that's coming up. So that whole video will be broadcasted with this thing, which is really very cool. So yeah, if you are interested in a webcam like this, link in in the description as well, and you can check it out and pick it up if you want. So very good. There you go. And again, is it weird that I'm actually like happy about a USB-A to C cable? That actually means a lot to me. It really does. Like that is a very useful cable because I have a Google Pixel, and the primary charger that comes with it is a C to C and then a power brick. So anytime I want to charge it in anything generic, I can't. So that's nice to actually have an extra one of those laying around because I've only got like one of those. But yeah, so thank you to eMeet. Moving on. The next thing up is from Limited Run Games. I actually bought this. This is not sent in. I actually paid for this. So let's take a look at it. This is something I wanted for a while, and it's finally here. We have, well, we got my Donatello card. That should be a big clue. We have, yeah, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge for the Xbox One. The limited run edition. I'm very excited to play this because this is by .mu. These are the guys who made Streets of Rage 4. These guys were like clearly fans of a bunch of different games in the 90s and decided the companies that own them aren't going to do anything with them. Let's make them ourselves. And they got the license. They did it on purpose. And this game is amazing. Like from everything, like everybody says, this is an unbelievable game. So very much looking forward to having that and playing that and having a physical edition, no less. Awesome. So very, very cool to pick that up. And the last thing we have up here is the kind of save the best for last logic. This actually comes from Sega. Oh yes. They sent me a little package here. So let's see if we can get into this box without utterly destroying it. There's our tape. All right, let's do it. Yeah, one second I said that, you probably have some clue as to what it is, but let's take a look. There. Oh, there it is. Wow, it really is small. Look at that. The Sega Genesis Mini 2. Nothing else in there, right? Yep. Yeah. This is. Look at that. Now I know every YouTuber's already done videos on this. I hadn't had the chance to because like it's literally just getting here right now. So Sega reached out to me a while ago asking if I wanted to do a review unit, and I was like, yeah, absolutely. But the problem was it arrived the day I landed in Japan. And I was there for 2 weeks. So I had no time to look at it. And you're seeing it. This is the first time I've had a chance to even look at it. So stay tuned. This will get its own video. It'll be a fun little thing. Yeah, this is really cool because I'm not a huge fan of the whole mini consoles thing. I do have a Genesis Mini Model 1 there-ish. But like the other ones, like the PC Engine one, the Nintendo ones, like I just haven't cared as much. But of course I have a soft spot for Sega, I have to admit it. And the idea that they made some actual hardware, even if it's, not like a brand new console, it's still just, I'm very happy about that. So I'm very much looking forward to diving into this thing. Very cool. The American variant too. So we'll get around to that. So, but yeah, thank you very much to Sega for that. Thank you to Miril Lakio Charms. Thank you to, of course, the people at Cloner Alliance and eMeet. Thank you to Joseph for making that happen. And I guess I want to say thank you to Best Buy for having a Black Friday sale, but that doesn't really count. Oh, and thank you to, the guys at Wave. So please, again, if you're British, prepare for this. April in Norwich. I will be there. Let's hang out. We'll get Indian food. We'll play video games. It'll be a great old time. So yeah. So guys, as always, please do me a favor, like, comment, and subscribe. Check me out on all the social media stuff in the description: Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Discord, Patreon, etc. Check out the new channel, Flying and Eating, which again will have all these Japanese videos over there. Thank you very much, and I'll see you all later.